My wife confessed to cheating for 4 years because she was bored. Now she wants me back for 17 years. My wife, 39, and I, for him, were married. Together, we raised three beautiful daughters, ages 11, 13, and 15. We had been together for 23 years, meeting as high school sweethearts. She was my world, my best friend, and the mother of my children. Looking back, everything we built now feels like a cruel illusion, shattered by a confession that blindsided me and left me questioning every moment we shared. 3 weeks ago, my wife returned home after work and quickly packed an overnight bag. She said little to our eldest daughter before leaving, visibly distraught and crying. She didn't say goodbye to me or our other two girls. Her departure was abrupt, and none of my calls or texts were answered. It was as if she vanished, leaving us in a painful limbo. When I contacted her parents, they assured me she was with them, urging me to be patient. Their vague reassurances only deepened my confusion and fear. I reached out to her brother and closest colleagues, but no one could provide answers. It felt like an invisible wall had been built around her, shutting me and our children out. Sitting at home with our daughters, I tried to hold everything together. Every time they asked what happened, all I could say was, "Mom is with Grandma and Grandpa, and we need to be patient." But their questions were relentless, and my lack of answers made it impossible to console them or myself. The weight of their confusion mirrored my own anguish, and I found myself grappling with the unbearable silence. I resisted the urge to drive to her parents' house unannounced. It was only 3 hours away, but I felt paralyzed by a mix of fear and disbelief. What could possibly explain this? We hadn't fought. There were no signs of trouble in our marriage. The unanswered questions gnawed at my sanity. Had someone died? Was she in trouble? Was there something so terrible that she couldn't face me? As the days dragged on, I spiraled deeper into anxiety and despair. Finally, after sleepless nights, I made a decision. I called the police to conduct a wellness check at her parents' home. The result was a revelation I wasn't prepared for. The officer informed me that my wife had been having an affair for at least 2 years. Her lover, a colleague she had known for years, had died of a heart attack on the day she left. The shock was like a physical blow. For years, I had believed we were partners in life, sharing every triumph and setback. The realization that she had been betraying me, our marriage, and our family was devastating. Worse, her parents and sister had known about the affair and covered for her. They had been complicit in her deception, while I remained blissfully ignorant. The truth unraveled slowly, each revelation more painful than the last. The affair had lasted at least 4 years, possibly longer. It had started emotionally and escalated into something physical. It continued through lockdowns and family milestones, all while I remained oblivious, trusting her implicitly. The man she had been with wasn't just a fling. He was someone she cared for deeply, enough to consider leaving her family behind. When my wife finally returned home after 3 weeks, the tension was unbearable. She walked through the door and attempted to hug me as if nothing had happened. I recoiled, my heart breaking all over again. "Do you love this family enough to tell us the truth?" I asked, my voice trembling with restrained anger. Her response was evasive. She wasn't ready to talk. She couldn't face what she had done. I had set one condition for her return. She had to sit down with me, look me in the eye, and tell me everything. I wanted her to own her betrayal and explain how she could destroy everything we had built together. Instead, she avoided my gaze and retreated into silence. I pressed her, my anger boiling over. 4 years. 4 years you lied to me. 4 years you pretended to be my wife while sneaking around with another man. How could you do this to me? To our daughters? Her silence was deafening. She stood there, looking at the floor, offering no defense, no apology. It was as if she had no words to justify her actions, or perhaps she didn't care enough to try. My daughters overheard the confrontation. Our eldest stormed downstairs, yelling at her mother with a fury I hadn't seen before. My wife retreated to the bedroom and locked the door, leaving me to pick up the pieces. That night, I could hear her sobbing through the door. It should have brought me some comfort, some assurance that she felt remorse. Instead, it left me feeling hollow. Her tears couldn't undo the damage she had done. They couldn't erase the betrayal or rebuild the trust she had shattered. In the days that followed, her parents came to visit, hoping to mediate. They pleaded with me to forgive her, to keep our family intact. They were ashamed of her actions and desperate to see her out of their home. Their pleas fell on deaf ears. Forgiveness felt impossible. How could I forgive someone who had shown such callous disregard for me and our children? I met with attorneys to explore my options. Divorce was the logical next step, but it wasn't a decision I took lightly. Our state required a 90-day waiting period, giving me time to weigh my choices. Despite everything, a part of me wanted answers, closure that only my wife could provide. I asked her to sit down with our daughters and apologize, to explain her actions and answer their questions. They deserved that much, at least. She agreed reluctantly, but her words felt hollow. The damage to their relationship was profound, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. Each day brought new challenges. I struggled to sleep, haunted by memories of our life together and the betrayal that had torn it apart. Rage and sadness consumed me, alternating in a vicious cycle. I found solace in small routines, focusing on my daughters and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. One night, as I lay awake, the weight of everything hit me. The life I had built, the woman I had loved, the family we had created, it was all tainted by her actions. The future I had envisioned was gone, replaced by uncertainty and pain. I knew I had to make a choice, not just for myself, but for my daughters. They needed stability, and they needed a father who could guide them through this turmoil. I resolved to prioritize their well-being above all else, even if it meant making difficult decisions about my marriage. When my wife finally sat down with me, she admitted to the affair, but offered little insight into her motivations. She spoke of boredom, dissatisfaction, and a desire for something different. Her words felt like daggers, each one twisting the knife deeper. "I was bored," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think you would find out, and I didn't think it would matter." It mattered. It mattered more than she could ever understand. I asked her if she had ever loved me, if the life we built had meant anything to her. She looked away, unable to answer. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I told her I wanted a divorce. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but it was the only path forward. Staying together for the sake of appearances or the children would only prolong the pain. We both deserved the chance to rebuild our lives separately. The road ahead is uncertain. I don't know what the future holds for me or my daughters, but I know we will face it together. My wife's betrayal has left scars that will take years to heal, but I am determined to move forward. To anyone reading this who has experienced similar pain, you are not alone. The journey is difficult, But there is strength in acknowledging your pain and seeking support. Lean on those who care for you, and remember that healing is a process, not a destination. As for me, I will continue to put one foot in front of the other, for my daughters, for myself, and for the future we deserve. The day my world crumbled began like any other. For years, I thought I knew my wife. She was my partner, my confidant, the woman with whom I shared my life's dreams and challenges. Together, we built a family, raising 3 daughters who brought immeasurable joy into our lives. But a single revelation unraveled everything I believed in, leaving me in the wreckage of betrayal. It started with an overheard conversation between my wife and her sister. At first, it seemed harmless, just idle chatter. But there was something in my wife's tone that caught my attention. Suspicion gnawed at me, and I decided to dig deeper. What I uncovered shattered my trust. My wife had been unfaithful. For over 4 years, she had carried on an affair with a coworker, a man introduced to her by her sister, a man who promised her excitement, luxury, and an escape from the boredom of family life. When I confronted her, she initially denied it. But as I presented the evidence, messages, unexplained absences, and inconsistencies, her defenses crumbled. She broke down, admitting everything. She confessed to how it began with innocent conversations at work, escalating into flirtation, and eventually crossing lines neither of us thought she was capable of crossing. She cried, begged for forgiveness, and claimed to love me, but her words felt hollow. Her actions over the past 4 years spoke louder than any apology ever could. The days following the revelation were a blur of anger, sadness, and disbelief. My daughters, unaware of the full extent of the situation, sensed the tension in the house. My oldest daughter had several heated arguments with her mother, while the younger 2 clung to me for reassurance. I did my best to shield them from the chaos. But how do you protect children from the implosion of their family? At first, I hoped for an amicable separation. I wanted to prioritize the well-being of my daughters and avoid subjecting them to drawn-out legal battles. My wife and I agreed to cohabitate temporarily for the sake of stability, but the arrangement was far from stable. She spent weekends at her sister's house to give us space, but during the weekdays, we awkwardly avoided each other, exchanging only the bare minimum of conversation. One evening, after another tense day of silence, she cornered me in the kitchen. She wanted to talk about the affair, but was hesitant to broach the subject. Her apology came unexpectedly, and before I knew it, the dam of emotions I had held back burst open. I yelled, venting every ounce of pain, anger, and betrayal I felt. For hours, I laid bare my heart, telling her how deeply she had hurt me and how her actions had torn apart the life we had built together. She cried, repeatedly whispering, "I'm sorry," but her tears didn't soften my resolve. They only fueled my anger. I couldn't believe the woman I loved and trusted could betray me so profoundly. After that night, she began apologizing more frequently, asking for a chance to make things right. But her pleas felt manipulative, almost rehearsed. She became relentless, knocking on my door late at night, trying to initiate conversations about our marriage. Her persistence only deepened my resentment. On another particularly difficult night, she begged me to hear her out. Reluctantly, I agreed, and we ended up sitting in the car for hours as she confessed everything in painstaking detail. She explained how her affair started out of boredom, not out of any dissatisfaction with our marriage. She described how she had felt trapped in the routine of family life and sought excitement elsewhere. Her coworker, older, wealthy, and divorced became her escape. He promised her luxury and adventure, and she fell for it, knowing it would cost her everything if the truth ever came out. Her confession left me hollow. There were no red flags in our marriage, no fights, no distance, no lack of intimacy. She admitted that she never stopped loving me, but claimed that the thrill of her double life had been too intoxicating to resist. To hear her justify years of deceit with the excuse of boredom was devastating. When I asked her if she would choose me or him if she had to decide, she hesitated. Her eventual answer me felt forced, a desperate attempt to salvage the wreckage of our relationship. It didn't matter. My decision was made. I told her we would divorce and co-parent amicably for the sake of our daughters. I reminded her that if she truly loved me, she would respect my choice and make the process as painless as possible. Despite her promises to cooperate, living together became unbearable. Every interaction was fraught with tension, every shared moment a reminder of what we had lost. My daughters struggled to understand why their parents, who had always been their anchor, were falling apart. My oldest stopped speaking to her mother altogether, while the younger two retreated into silence. I did everything I could to maintain a semblance of normalcy for them. We went to therapy, and I made sure to spend quality time with them, reassuring them that they were loved and that none of this was their fault. But their pain mirrored my own, and it killed me to see them suffer. In moments of solitude, I wrestled with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to believe that our years together meant something, that we could rebuild. But another part of me, the part that bore the scars of her betrayal, knew that forgiveness wouldn't erase the pain or rebuild the trust she had shattered. The divorce process was grueling. While she initially agreed to an uncontested separation, her actions often contradicted her words. She vacillated between apologizing profusely and attempting to manipulate the situation in her favor. It was exhausting, emotionally and mentally. There were nights when I lay awake, haunted by memories of our life together. The vacations, the laughter, the quiet moments of connection, they all felt tainted now. I replayed her confession in my mind, trying to make sense of how someone who claimed to love me could betray me so completely. As the weeks turned into months, I began to find strength in the support of friends, family, and therapy. I realized that my anger, while justified, was holding me back. I needed to let go not for her, but for myself and my daughters. The day our divorce was finalized felt bittersweet. It marked the end of a chapter, a painful one, but also the beginning of a new chapter. I was no longer tied to a woman who had hurt me so deeply, but I also mourned the life we had planned together, the dreams that would never come to fruition. Looking back, I've learned that healing is not linear. There are days when the anger resurfaces, when the pain feels fresh, and when I question if I'll ever truly move on. But there are also days when I feel hopeful, when I see glimpses of a brighter future for me and my daughters. I share this story not for sympathy, but as a reminder that even in the depths of betrayal, there is a path forward. It's not easy, and it's not quick, but it's possible. For those who find themselves in a similar situation, know that you are not alone. There is strength in facing the truth, in standing up for yourself, and in choosing to prioritize your own well-being and that of your children. This journey has been the hardest of my life, but it has also shown me the depth of my own resilience. I am moving forward, one step at a time, determined to rebuild a life rooted in honesty, trust, and love.